Hey everybody, and welcome back to part two of my Premier League review. I usually don't do kind of split things into two parts, but realistically, we'd only got up to 11th and we were 40 odd minutes in, so it makes sense. I think I've got plenty more to say about the way things are going. Um, so I've got my little notepad if you remember last time. Southampton we got two, gave them a C plus, Everton a C minus, Newcastle a B, Palace a C, Brighton a C, West Ham a D, Aston Villa a C minus, D for Bournemouth, D for Watford, E for Norwich. Yeah, I haven't obviously seen any feedback from you guys as to whether you kind of agree or not with that, but let me know. Always intrigued. And yeah, we're going to start off with Burnley and work our way up. I don't really have much to say about Burnley because I feel like they're just Burnley, aren't they? Like they're just kind of established at this mid-level, like Premier League side. They don't seem to have a particularly good team. Like I couldn't really name their team, but they just do, for whatever reason, they just seem to grind out results, and they just have their way of playing. They don't seem to score that many goals. Like, I mean, their top goal scorer is Chris Wood with 14, which isn't terrible. Rodriguez chipped in with 8, but I mean, midfield wise, they don't have anybody who's really scoring in midfield. Dwight McNeil, a lot of people praising him. I think he had quite a good season as a lot of people made out, but I think he could come through to be pretty decent for them. And then they just have a super solid defence, don't they? 15 clean sheets for Nick Pope. He did very well. Yeah, they're just Burnley, aren't they? Scored 43 times. It's not really very many. Conceded 50. When you look at, they conceded as many goals as Palace, but they scored 12 more goals. So they're not terrible at scoring goals, but they're not as prolific as a lot of other clubs. But they've just got their ways about them, haven't they? Really. And Sean Dyche, I think, another great season for them. I don't think I can get a tracker of like where they. Oh no, I can look. Yeah, there were times when they went on some bad runs and they were skirting down towards the bottom. But yeah, look at that end of season kind of run. That one loss there to Man City, which is really no disgrace, and then on the restart, and then unbeaten until the very last day of the season against Brighton. They're just a really solid side, aren't they, Burnley? Like I don't really like them, but they're solid, I'm going to give them a B. I'd give them more, but at the end of the day, they flew that dumb banner over, didn't they? I know it's not their fault, so I'm not really taking any points off, but that was pretty dumb. And the only thing they've got to do next season is keep Sean Dyche. I think I said Sean Farrell. It's Sean Dyche anyway. All they've got to do is keep him, and they'll be okay. He's a very underrated manager, I think. When you hear him in punditry, I think he's a lot. People think of him as this kind of dinosaur. He's got this one way of playing, but he's smart. He knows what he's doing, and he's got the best out of Burnley for what he's done. Like on paper, they look a worse side than definitely Everton, probably Newcastle, West Ham. Some of the other teams which are languishing down the bottom there. And for them to be, 2 points off Arsenal, to be 5 points off Wolves when people will praise Wolves to high heaven, is a remarkable achievement. I think they've done really well, and they should be very proud. I think, they were obviously in the. They had a bit of a hangover from the Europa League, and they struggled a little bit, but they're not going to have that next season. And I think if they can get some quality players in, 2 or 3 just to give them a boost, then yeah, they can certainly aim for where they are or a little bit higher. And I think that is really what Burnley are going to achieve. I don't know if they're ever going to be able to push that much higher than where they are. I know obviously they did get into the Europa League one season, but it becomes harder and harder each season to do that. But I definitely think Sean Dyche deserves a bigger job. When I see, what frustrates me is when I see, and it probably frustrates him too, is when I see Frank Lampard getting the Chelsea job and I see Mikel Arteta getting the Arsenal job, because I'm like, those players, they were magnificent players, but managerially, it's like in your job. If you can imagine what your job is now, say you're a manager in your job, and you were going for a job as a manager at another site, and you had 15 years of great experience. You've constantly achieved every season, and you walk into the interview and you ace the interview, does well, and then the next day you find out that actually they gave it to the 25-year-old lad who's been like a really solid like salesman or something like that, but has no managerial experience, but he's a good looking guy. You kind of feel like you would be a bit put out, wouldn't you? And I think that's kind of Sean Dyche in a nutshell, really. I would certainly be put out in that case. I'm not saying that Mikel Arteta or Frank Lampard have done bad jobs. We'll discuss what they've done, but I do think that it's very unfair on Sean Dyche that he hasn't been considered for a bigger job. Because I think with better players, he would play a different type of football. I think he's just got to play what he's got to play with Burnley. Speaking of kind of hitting above their mark, Sheffield United are obviously the real kind of success story of the season. Obviously, 3 bad results at the end of the season don't make up, don't take away what they have achieved, throughout the season. They went on some great runs, undefeated. They've been incredibly hard to beat. You can see they haven't scored many goals, and that is a worry. But 39 goals conceded is only bettered by the top 3 in the league. Sorry, magnificent, really, really good. Striking wise is their problem, and they're Premier League mid-table side now. They should be able to afford to go out and buy a striker or two. I actually think Ollie McBurney's a pretty good striker, but I don't think he's ever going to be a prolific, get you 15 plus goals a season. And I think the rest of the strikers they've got, I just don't think they're capable. I don't think they're going to cut it, to be completely honest. In midfield, they've got a fairly decent midfield, I think. They might want to put in a little bit of creativity in there, which might help them going forward. And then defensively, they're pretty solid, and they can keep Henderson for another season. Then they will be really rocking. If they lose Henderson because he's only on loan, obviously, if Man United decide to take him back, which they could do with De Gea's form, then they're going to be in trouble a little bit. But we often see teams come out the blocks well in the Premier League and completely fall off at the back end of the season. They didn't do that. They had some little blips. They had a couple of losses here, but it's Man City and Liverpool. And then they'd get back on the bandwagon and get that result. And I think that's the difference between them and Bournemouth in a little way. So if we go down, actually, because I didn't do this before, if we look at Bournemouth, you're not going to show me the graph thing, no? Oh, is it because you can't have 2 open at once or something? Is it really? Why? It shows everyone else, just not. Wow, look at that for Norwich. That is horrific. Look at, they lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games on the trot. Watford didn't win a game until their 12th game of the season. Okay, here we go. Bournemouth loaded. Yeah, Bournemouth. They can get some wins, and then when they go on a bad run, they really go on a bad run, and it just seems to wreck their confidence. They don't seem to be able to get out of it, and that is ultimately what got them relegated, as I kind of said before. But yeah, Sheffield United, fantastic season, much greater than some of their parts. I really feel they need to invest in some attackers for next season. They didn't get in the Europa League, which I really think did them a favour. I don't think they had the squad to do that. I know it would have been great for them as a club, but they really have overachieved. I'd definitely give them an A for the season. I don't think anyone can argue with that. People were saying they were going to go straight back down. They didn't really buy that many players, and they're a side which has shown that in certain times you can come up and play the same football. But as I said with Norwich, if you're going to play possession football, you've got to be damn sure you've got the players to play it. Sheffield United don't play possession football. They play a different style, and they can carry on and play that style in the Premier League where, they're not expected to have 70% possession. They've had a great season. Now Arsenal. A real Jekyll and Hyde team, Arsenal, aren't they, really? You're going to show me your results at some point? They really... Okay, here we go. A very weird team, Arsenal. I've talked about them a lot because I find them quite fascinating in a way which I just haven't, because for a team for a long time, because they've been on such a kind of consistent downturn when some of the answers seem so obvious. They seem to just make mistakes at every juncture. They finish 8th, which is, for a club like Arsenal, wholly unacceptable. Like, they should be challenging for top 4. They've finished 10 points off the top 4. They've got an FA Cup final to play, and they could win the FA Cup final, and you'd have to turn and say, well, another bit of silverware. That's job done. They'll get into the Europa League off that, which they're not in at the minute. Pointing out they're not in Europe at the minute. I don't know if they still go in anyway, because if Chelsea are playing them, they're already in the Champions League. So I think the Europa League place goes to... I don't know where it goes anyway. I generally don't know. But I don't think Arsenal really want to be in the Europa League anyway. But this is the thing about Arsenal. Are they a big club anymore? Like, when I look at their team, I don't want to go, okay, goalkeeper, yeah, you've got a really good goalkeeper, and actually a pretty decent substitute goalkeeper as well, as it turns out. I look at their defence, and all I see is disaster everywhere. Like, I don't see any of these players in the defence who would go into a top 6 team. None of them. The one exception might be Kieran Tierney, who perhaps could turn into a great player. He's still quite young, and I can let him off. It's his first season in English football. The rest of them, I'm afraid, are mid-table players, mid-table Premier League players. The fact that Arsenal are kind of putting all their hopes on William Saliba, this, what was he, 18, 19-year-old from the French league, to come in and save their defence, says it all. Like, their defence is championship level almost. It's a joke. Midfield wise, again, I see very underperforming midfielders. Ozil, who even knows? Like, Mesut Ozil is going to be one of those great kind of wastes of talent, I feel, where he, in a certain role, in a certain team, he is magnificent. But that has not been the Arsenal team for the last few years, and they just have not known how to deal with him. I feel like they gave him a contract out of fear because they lost Sanchez for nothing. Well, nearly nothing. Obviously, they swapped him for Mkhitaryan, which, as we all know, worked out really well, but for both parties. They put him on this massive contract, and now they're lumbered with him. And he's had 2 managers who, quite frankly, have not wanted him. And they don't know what to do with him. It's kind of fascinating, It's such a shame because I feel like he's a really good player. There's clearly not just the club at fault here. Clearly, the player doesn't really have much of a willpower to move. I know it's easy to dump on Mesut Ozil. It's a cliche thing, but the reality of the situation is that if he wanted to play football, he could go to other clubs, but he'd have to take a pay cut, and I don't think he wants to do that. So he hasn't. I don't think he wants to. I don't think his motivation is to break into this Arsenal team. He loves the club and he wants to break in the team. But I don't think he really cares right now. It's not the same Arsenal as it was when he joined. But I don't think he wants to lose the money. And frankly, we can slate footballers all we want, but the reality of the situation is that, if you were in a job which paid you a massive amount of money, wasn't particularly difficult. He doesn't really play that much competitive football, does he? So he does training and he sits on a subs bench. You have plenty of free time to do what you like. You're incredibly well paid. You don't really get that much flack, it seems. He doesn't get much flack like the club seem to get the flack about him. And you just kind of sit there looking pretty for a couple of years, taking the money home. No one could say they probably wouldn't do that. I know footballers' careers are short and they want to win things, but this guy's won a World Cup. Yeah, he's going to walk away at the end of his career and be like, I won a World Cup. What did you win? Yeah, I think he's won the Spanish league. Did he win the Champions League with Real Madrid? I don't actually know, but he's won stuff. He's okay. He's going to be fine. The club need to do something about him though, and I don't know what they're going to do. Torreira, in my opinion, has not looked too good. Guendouzi's kind of fallen off a cliff. Maitland-Niles is always just a backup player. Xhaka has responded well, I think, to the kind of terrible incidents that we saw under Emery. He's come back in, and I think under Arteta, he's going to be a mainstay at the side. I don't think he's good enough to be a top 6 player, though. So what that says about them, I don't know. Willock's, I don't think has really done much. There's a lot of highly rated Arsenal youngsters who I feel have not really impressed. A couple who have done really well, but I don't think Willock's done too well. Personally, he can still grow. Like, what is he, 20? Yeah, he's 20. So he definitely deserves another season or two. Ceballos, I feel, is a very boring player. Like, he has really good stats, but he just passes the ball sideways a lot, and it doesn't really do that much for the team, I don't think. And then you get to the strikers, and on paper, this is the strength of the team. Look at Lacazette, Aubameyang, Martinelli, Nelson, Pepe, Saka, and Nketiah. And I feel like all of them, barring Saka and Aubameyang, and Colin Martinelli, I guess, have just disappointed. Like, Pepe came in for a massive price tag, and really, that is not a good return for him. They would be wanting him to be double figures for goals at least. Lacazette spent half the season not scoring, well, most of the season not even scoring an away goal. He's really fallen off his performances. Aubameyang is a class player, and I think he's going to go to a bigger club. He deserves to play in the Premier League, I think. He's got a few seasons left. He is remarkably fit for a player his age. And when I say player his age, what is he? 30? 31. Yeah, he's still rapid. He's still going to be able to play for a good few seasons. So if a Real Madrid or someone like that come in for him, I could honestly think that would be a good move for him. Martinelli, Nelson, Saka, and Nketiah are the future. They need game time. You can see their combination, their goals combinations are not great. You know, there's 4, 5, 7 goals in there for 50 plus appearances. It's not great return from those players, but they're young and they're going to get better. So there's definitely some DNA in here. My problem has always been with Arsenal is that there's no leaders there, experienced players to bring through those youngsters. I know you've got Aubameyang, who's 31. He's obviously good for them, but I kind of feel like he's going to leave. Pepe's 26. I don't think he's 25. He's not an experienced player to lead. Lacazette, I'm not sure is a great role model for him. Midfield wise, you have Granit Xhaka, and that's it. Defence, you shouldn't be learning anything from these defenders, to be honest. Ozil's obviously not a great role model you want for people, so I don't feel like there's that they're having to bed a lot of youngsters in because their senior players are not performing, and it's causing them problems. They need to sign some senior players. I don't think they will. I don't think they've got the money, especially not being in the Champions League. They need to sign defenders. Like, people can talk about midfield attack, whatever. They need to sign defenders. It's not glamorous. It will make them better. Yeah, they conceded 48 goals, scored 56. They finished 2 points above Sheffield United, who only conceded 39. They scored. They draw a lot of games. 14 draws is the second joint top in the league. Yeah, joint top in the league. Even under Arteta, if we look at their positions, when did Arteta come in? He was definitely in for January, wasn't he? Wasn't he? When did Mikel Arteta join? How does it tell us on here? Mikel Arteta, no, it doesn't. Maybe it tells here. Joined club 22nd December. So yeah, he came in December. If we look at Arsenal, how many wins did they have before December? Where's December hit? So he hit there. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wins. After him, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, yeah, they are better. Okay, yes, they've had some good runs. They have been better, yes, obviously. But they've also had some losses. You know, Brighton one sticks in the memory. Spurs, Aston Villa, Chelsea, and Man City. And they've drawn a lot. You know, these kind of 1-1s, things like that. They've kind of struggled on, and they've gone on little runs, and then they always hit a blip. They would be if Arteta was there for the whole season. I think they would have been higher. I don't know if they would have made up 10 points, but I think they could have got fifth. But next season is going to be an interesting one for Arsenal. Do they stick or twist? You know, do they stick with what they've got and keep going with those youngsters and keep trying to bring them through? Or do they twist and go, you know what, we need to buy some players. We've got to spend some money. It's tough for all clubs to be spending money for obvious reasons. You know, the revenue has not been as much this season for them because of the fans, and overall, there's a recession coming. Or if we're not already in it, we are in it really, technically, and it's going to be here for a while. So, is it realistic for a club like Arsenal to be spending 150, 200 million on players, which they kind of need to do to be able to challenge, which is where they want to be? No, they're not going to do that. What they're going to do, they're probably going to spend 50 million, unless they make back a lot of money. I personally feel they could afford to lose Aubameyang, and with that money, sign defenders. I think they've got enough up top next season. Aubameyang, because the problem is, if they want to replace Aubameyang, they've got to spend 100 million, and they're not going to get that for him, and they can't afford to do that. So I would turn around and be like, okay, lose Aubameyang. You've got good options up front. I think these guys will be better next season. Just spend on defenders, for the love of God. Please. Please. If I'm scoring Arsenal, I don't think that they could have had a worse season, let's face it. If Emery had stayed on, it would have been a lot worse. But I think from their level, you've got to give them a D, like from where they want to be, because their expectation would be to finish in the Champions League, and they're 10 points off that, which is not good enough. Next up, you've got Wolves. Wolves, such a consistent team, aren't they? They had a bad start, a very bad start. I think that was Europa League again, which hurt them. But then they really recovered. Then they recovered very well. Little blips here and there, but otherwise did pretty well. And really, just faltered at the last stop to get that potentially that like Europa League place. I don't think they're in the Europa League, are they? I think 6th and 5th will get it. I think. So really unfortunate to just kind of miss out on that. Spurs just pipping them to the post there, because Spurs have been pretty bad this season, I think. But, from where they are, and again, they are better than some of their parts. They have some really excellent players. I'm going to be really interested to see if like Adama Traore manages to stay. I think he could play at a much higher level. Jimenez clearly can play at a much higher level. Very, very good striker. 17 goals for the season, 6 assists. He, I know he's not young, but 29, you're still going to get a good few seasons out of him. There should be some big clubs looking at him. And then a really solid kind of midfield, Coutinho, Neves, Dendoncker. Just very solid, aren't they? And defensively as well, pretty solid. Good goalkeeper. Just and Nuno Santos has done a brilliant job with them. I've got to give them probably a B. Um, yeah, I'm going to give them a B plus. I think they're not quite to an A. I think they'd be a little bit disappointed just to miss out at the end of the season out on 6th or possibly 5th. But I think they've had a really good season. Only 40 goals conceded. They're very, very solid. But 51 is not a bad total to score. So they've got a lot of good parts. They need, I think, 1 or 2 players to really push on, and I'm really interested to see if they're going to, get those players or what happens with them. But I think that they do a really good job. And again, Nuno Santos, I think, deserves a bigger job if one comes up. But we'll see. He probably doesn't want to move. I think he's onto a good thing here with Wolves. I think they're going to continue to push, and could become could force their way into that kind of top 6. After a bad start, if they'd have had a decent start, they would have been Champions League. They didn't win in their first 6 games. It took their 7th game to win. They'd have won a couple of those games. They could have been in Champions League. Crazy. So yeah, I'll give them a B plus. I think, because I think we underestimate them. It was only a few seasons ago they were in the Championship. They've done remarkably well. They've invested, but they've invested well. So there's not many players in their squad who they've kind of picked up in the last couple of seasons who has just been terrible really at all. And they've got bargains, I think, when they have kind of picked up players. So yeah, I think they're going to be pretty good. I wonder how many more Portuguese players they can sign. It is kind of ridiculous, but it's working out for them. Yeah, Tottenham. Tottenham are an interesting team, aren't they? Actually, let's have a look at where they were. So, they finished up 7 points off of the Champions League places, which is where they want to be. A team like Spurs. They obviously had a real up and down start to the season, and eventually Pochettino was obviously replaced. When was he replaced? Let's have a look. So Jose Mourinho, 20th of November. Seems like ages ago, doesn't it? I mean, it was kind of, in a way. So 20th of November. So he started off with a 3-2 win at West Ham. They had some blips, like they lost to Man United, they lost to Chelsea, lost to Southampton, lost to Liverpool, lost to Chelsea again, lost to Wolves, lost to Sheffield United. But undoubtedly, they did pick up a bit, from where they were. In terms of where Spurs should be, they would want to be higher, the same with Arsenal. I'm going to give them a C minus, because I don't believe, and Arsenal fans will love this if I say that Tottenham are as big a side as Arsenal right now, but they have, in the same way, they've got 2 or 3 real quality players at Spurs. I think their defence is a little bit weak, and I know they're going to be kind of strengthening that, because they've lost Vertonghen, I believe, was his last season with them. I'm not convinced by Sergio Aurier. Just 6 clean sheets for Lloris is not very good for him. Dele Alli's. You say I was about to say Dele Alli's fallen off a cliff. 8 goals and 4 assists is not the worst thing in the world, but he hasn't looked the same Dele Alli this season. Whether or not that will pick up, I don't know. Moira, I don't think he had a very good season either. Ndombele, should be able to say that properly, has, I don't really know, really. I feel like he got thrown under the bus a lot when it's his first season in English football. We'll see if he can recover. And up front, Son is a quality player, real top quality, I think. Harry Kane got injured a fair bit, but still managed 18 goals in the season. Bergwijn looks like a decent signing for them, I think. Troy Parrott, I hope you get some more games for him. He's a quality youngster. Probably won't under Mourinho. But I mean, what they have under Mourinho now is a guy who knows how to win, and I'm intrigued to know if Spurs can keep hold of Harry Kane and if they can keep hold of Son. If a big team comes in with £100 million and wants to buy Harry Kane off them and they're in the Champions League, what does Harry Kane do? Do we think Spurs? What's their ambition? Are they going to be able to spend money next season? Because with the stadium, they can't really afford to spend much, can they? So they're not in the Champions League, so they haven't got that income. I wonder, if Son and Kane are capable of playing for any side in the world, in my opinion. They could walk into any side in the world. They're two of the very best. How long until Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Juventus, Liverpool, Man City, Man United starts knocking on the door for them, and Spurs, can't keep them any longer. I don't know if I could see Son leaving. I don't know if Kane necessarily would. He is, Tottenham, from his younger days. But I think either one of them leaves really hurts them, and they will struggle to replace them. I really don't know if Mourinho is the right guy for Spurs. At the end of the day, he does have a heck of a track record. He will either work or it will be a complete failure. And I honestly can't say it's been a failure so far. He did stabilise a bit. They did have some great results. I think if they back him with some money, which you've got to do with Mourinho, we know what he's about. He's about buying, in players. They've got to back him with money. I don't know where that money comes from, so we'll see. But if they do, they could challenge next season if they keep hold of those players as well for one more year. We'll see. One more year, Harry Kane. One more year. So yeah, C- I'd give them. At the end of the day, they're lower than they want to be, but it wasn't a total disaster from where it started, I think, for them. Leicester, it's easy to criticise Leicester. They had a dismal second half of the season from where they were doing really well. They've been right up there consistently, for a long time. And they just kind of blew it towards the end of the season, these losses here, Everton, Bournemouth, Spurs, and then Man United, just blew their Champions League ambitions away. They would have been, if they'd have beaten Man United, even on the last game of the season, they would be in the Champions League. It's shocking how much they dropped off. I think on paper, if you just said Leicester are going to get fifth, you would say, yeah, they're kind of, that's a good season for them. Because my problem with Leicester is up front, they've got Jamie Vardy, who's top goal scorer in the Premier League. They haven't got much else. Iniacho, I don't think is good enough. Perez, I think, was only a backup. He's decent, but I don't think he's certainly not top four decent. Midfield wise, they've got some players who've underperformed this season, but some players who looked really good. Indeed, he's a quality player. Chowdhury looks like he could turn into a good player. Barnes looks decent. Tielemans is decent. Pratt has been useful when he's come in. Maddison is a bit hot and cold sometimes, I feel. Damari Gray, again, a bit hot and cold. Defensively, I think they've struggled a little bit. So I think Science has been quite good with Evans. And you've got kind of Pereira and Chilwell, and that's a solid four. But they're kind of prone to mistakes. Same with Kasper Schmeichel. I think he's a great goalkeeper, but he's prone to the odd mistake every now and then, and it costs them, unfortunately. They're just unlucky like that. I think they're a really good side, Leicester. Brendan Rodgers, I'm not too sure about as a manager. I wasn't one of those people who was on the Brendan Rodgers, it's the greatest thing since spread bandwagon when Leicester were winning these games. I was very much let's see where they finish at the end of the season. I think fifth for them, I'd actually give them a C+. I think that's kind of where they would want to be. And if you take the season as a whole, if you take the second half of the season, I think they've been a D. They should have got Champions League with how well they did. But if you look at it from the season as a whole and go, okay, at the end of the season, where are they? They're this good. It's been a decent enough season for them. They'll be gutted to miss out on the Champions League, though. It really is really bad for them. Next up, we've got Chelsea, who This is the thing. I said this at the beginning of the season. It's like Chelsea's squad is very good. Like people, from where they were like last season, I think people just thought that suddenly all these players just became bad. Like they didn't. They just didn't work well under Sarri, did they? But Jorginho, Kante, you know, I think Loftus-Cheek is great, even though he doesn't appear to play. Barkley, Mount, Kovacic, Pulisic. These are great players. Like they are top quality players. Defensively, their defence has looked a little bit shaky. Yes, um, they have some good youngsters kind of coming through. And, we'll see kind of what's happening. I think the goalkeeper has had a bad season. He really has had a bad season. Um, Up front, there's been some, you know, interesting kind of. Some people have had a good season, some people haven't. Is Morata still actually their player? Interesting. Batshuayi, I don't think he's going to be around at the end of the season. He's going to go somewhere. Abraham, I think, will. I think he's had a good season. He did tail off a little bit, though. Willian is just a consistent guy. He's obviously going, probably to Arsenal. He is going. They will kind of miss that consistency. I know a lot of those 9 goals have been penalties. I think he takes a lot of penalties. But, he's not done terribly. Hudson-Odoi, I think, had a really disappointing season. Pedro's going. Giroud's had a great season, I think. I think Giroud's been brilliant for him. Like, he's just there. What is he now, 33? Yeah, 33. He's just scoring goals for him, isn't he? It's the most goals he scored from this season. He scores important goals, Giroud. He's there for a big club. I think Arsenal were a bit quick to get rid of him, to be completely honest with you. Um, Yeah, and there's a few players in midfield like Bakayoko they need to kind of get rid of. Gilmore was seen as the best thing since sliced bread, but he kind of fell off a bit. Mount, I think, had a good season. Again, he fell short a little bit towards the end of the season, but he's young and he will, it's understandable completely. Kovacic, I'm not a fan of, but I think he's done all right. I don't like him as a player, to be completely honest. Um, Pulisic, I think, started off obviously really slow, but I think he's been brilliant the second half of the season. I think he's going to go into next season, I think, with real quality, with some of the other players they've signed as well, which we'll go into already. I wish Loftus-Cheek would get more games from, but, I think he's a really quality player, but he obviously just doesn't fit into their plans, and I think he needs to move on. He was an England midfielder. He's played 7 times. He's a lot better than that. I think he's better than Barkley personally, but it's obviously the manager's choice. Kante has had quite a few injuries this season, which is why he hasn't played much, but he's obviously top quality. Jorginho just runs that midfield, doesn't he? And they need to kind of probably bring in a defender to stabilise and maybe think about a goalkeeper. But otherwise, I think they've done all right. And I mean, when you think they've got Ziyech and Werner coming in, like that is going to be frightening. Pulisic, Werner, and Ziyech up front as like a front three is terrifying. And then you can bring on like an Abraham off the bench or a Hudson-Odoi or Giroud. That's scary stuff. So I think Chelsea are really going to challenge next season if they can kind of sort that defence out and the goalkeeper. They finished 4th, I think, with Frank Lampard's debut season in charge. They've had some ups and downs, but they've consistently been in that kind of 4th place, really. They had a bad run there, but they came through it, and they lost 12 games. That's not good enough. They know that. They've conceded too many goals. You can see 54 there. Look, the place above 36, 35, 33 is just not anywhere near good enough. So they really need to improve, because if one of these teams here improves, they're not going to make the top 4 next season. But with the strikers they've got coming in, if they can improve the defence a little bit and possibly the goalkeeper, then I think they'll still be top 4, if not challenging more. They've got an FA Cup final. If they win that, I think Frank Lampard's had a great season. So I'm going to give Chelsea a B. I think they're a good side, but I think with Frank Lampard's debut season, like they could easily have tailed off. I think to get Champions League was massive for them. With the players they've got coming in, I think they've had a decent season though. They've been ups and downs. They've had some good results. They've had some not so good results. You can see here they lost to Sheffield United 3-0. That 5-3 was an interesting game. They've entertained. I'll give them that, Chelsea. And I want Frank Lampard to do well. He's a good young English manager. And I think stepping up from one season with Derby to come in the Premier League and get fourth, it's pretty good. I think they'll be happy with that. And if they can win the FA Cup, then they'll go up to an A. Put it that way. Next up, we have Man United. Yeah, so Man United, what a roller coaster for them. Terrible start to the season. Cracking finish. Probably one of the best teams in the country towards the second half of the season. Well, I'd say second best team in the country to Man City. We'll get into them in a minute. Clearly, the difference was Bruno Fernandes. Without a shadow of a doubt. It's actually fascinating to see how one player completely turned around a team who there was just no link between the midfield and strikers. And bringing him in and creating that link. And, 14 games, 8 goals, 7 assists. Yes, a lot of those penalties. But you don't get an assist for a penalty, He has been phenomenal for them. I think other teams will be looking around going, why the hell was he not on our radar sooner, He was exactly what they needed. Rashford was 17 goals. Martial was 17 goals. That's pretty good for those two. Greenwood looks like he's going to be phenomenal next season. That front three, I talked about Chelsea, their front three being scary. I think this is potentially as scary. The thing I would say is that if one of them gets injured, they don't have a lot else to come in, so they might want to look at that. Also, I'm not sure Greenwood is the right-sided answer. If they perhaps get in Sancho, who I know they've been linked with, I think that could be really phenomenal for them next season. We'll see. I still think their midfield, on paper, is the starting 11 is good, but there's a lot of players who are not good enough. Like Pereira is not good enough. He should never have played 25 games this season. I don't think Dan James is good enough for 33 games for Man United. And yet here he is. Fred picked up towards the end of the season, but he's not been brilliant. Matic, I don't think they should be going into next season with Matic should play, in that midfield. Lingard's not good enough. Mata's not good enough. So there's some shuffling needs to be done in midfield for them. But on paper, when you see Fernandes and Pogba, with possibly like a Matic or a Fred, it's really solid, three in midfield. Defensively, I think Wan-Bissaka had a decent season. 11 clean sheets is not too bad. Centrally, I'm not convinced in the partnership with Harry Maguire that perhaps Lindelof has. I think they're better than a lot. Comparing them to say Chelsea, they're better, and they haven't conceded that many goals. Realistically, they have had a pretty good season in that respect. 36 is what joint lowest. Yeah, sorry, third lowest with City and Liverpool. They just scored a lot more, but in the second half of the season, Man United have been on fire. 3-0, 2-0, 3-0, 3-0, 5-2, 3-0. 2-2, 2-0, 1-1, 2-0. If they probably had Bruno Fernandes at the beginning of the season, I don't know they think they would have won the league, but I think they probably would have challenged City for second, potentially. Because, goals have been the problem for them, scoring them. I'm not sure on Solskjaer yet. You have to give them the benefit of the doubt in that, bringing in Bruno Fernandes has made a huge difference for them, and he clearly is getting, good results out of Rashford, Martial, Greenwood. I don't know what's going to go on with Pogba. I think he's going to stay now, to be fair. Now they're in the Champions League, and now he has someone like Fernandes to play alongside, and now it looks like the team's on the right footing. I think he'll probably stay. But they do need to kind of strengthen. I think they should give De Gea another season. I'm not convinced by Kepa, but Kepa hasn't had, multiple seasons of being Man United's best player, and since 2011, 2012, he's been their number one goalkeeper. And I'd say out of the, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, he's going into his 10th year. I'd say he's had 8 years where he's been phenomenal. And it hasn't had a great last couple of seasons, but does that coincide with the fact that the defence hasn't been at its strongest? Yes. He's had good years when the defence has been at their strongest, but he definitely deserves another season. I will say that much. Yeah, so in terms of Man United, in terms of where they're going, like realistically, third place, finishing 33 points behind Liverpool, like you've honestly got to say, for a team like Man United, like it's a C. Like third place is not where they want to be. If you separate, as I said, in the same way with like Leicester, their second half of the season was abysmal. They were the opposite to Man United. Man United snuck in. So maybe I gave Leicester a C plus because at the end of the day, they're not Man United. Man United can go out and buy a Bruno Fernandes. They have a Paul Pogba. They have, Rashford, Martial, Greenwood, up front. Like they should be in the top 4. Leicester really should be in 5th, and they kind of achieved that. Or probably Arsenal and Spurs are bigger clubs than Leicester, right? So they've done well, I think, to finish above them. So I'd give Man United a C, but I'd temper that C to say, like, the second half of the season, I would probably give them an A. Like, I think they've been really great. Yeah. Well, realise that's a capital Y there on City. Then we talk about Man City. Just a fascinating side of Man City, aren't they? Capable of 5-0s, 5-0, 2-1, 4-0, 5-0. Capable of that, and capable of losing to Southampton 1-0. Capable of losing to Chelsea, to Man United, to Tottenham, to Wolves, to Man United again. Man United did a double over Man City this season, and still Man City finished 15 points ahead of them. Unbelievable. Lost to Liverpool, lost to Wolves, lost to Norwich. Inconsistency has hurt them. Of those 9 losses, 6 of them they probably shouldn't have lost. This wildly inconsistent team. 102 goals, phenomenal. 35 conceded, phenomenal. Plus 67, brilliant. And probably after the restart, one of the best teams in the country. Had a couple of blips, to be fair, but otherwise they've won every game apart from 2. And certainly in the last 5 games they were, phenomenal. So it's just a weird side. I don't know with City. Like, I mean, I think I don't know. Like Sterling, obviously, has done brilliant. He had a great season. Jesus and Aguero, they've done okay. I think Aguero has been injured a bit. Mahrez has done pretty well this season, I think. Foden, I think, is going to be a big player next season. I think he's done well after the restart. They're going to lose David Silva. That's a blow. But if they're bringing in Foden, then I think they've done all right. I think Rodrigo did okay. When they lost Laporte, that really hurt them. I think they need to get rid of Stones. Like he's not good enough for them. Walker as well. I don't think he's good enough to be playing for them. They need to rebuild in defence, basically. Otherwise, they're fine, really. Fernandinho, of those 30 games, probably about 25 of them were central defence, and that kind of says it all. Ederson's a great goalkeeper. They're doing well, but I think realistically they've got to. There's a few players they need to sign. De Bruyne, for me, has been the best player in the Premier League this season. I didn't actually look at his numbers. What were they? 13 goals, 20 assists. Just phenomenal. Incredible player. I know Henderson got the Football Writers Player of the Year, but it always goes to the team who wins the league, doesn't it, really? And I think De Bruyne has been better, honestly. I think De Bruyne has been one of the best players in the world this year. But that's the way it goes. Wildly inconsistent and, need to do better. But, they don't have the Champions League ban, so that's good. But where if they're probably going to buy, aren't they? Because money's not really an issue for them. The financial fair play thing, I don't know if it was right or wrong. Everyone would have loved to have seen them banned from Europe, but they're not. So they're going to push on, and I'm sure they're going to strengthen because money's not going to be an issue for them, is it? Let's face it. So they're going to push for next season, I'm sure. And then we've got to talk about Liverpool, who are 99 points, scored 85, conceded 33, which is the best in the country. So way less than a goal a game. Drew 3, lost 3. For a long, long time, they just won every game apart from that 1-1 draw with Man United. Up until that Watford game, that was probably the best team, I think, at just winning games I'd probably ever seen in my life. They were just phenomenal. And, I talked about Eddie Howe and perhaps his inability to manage a run, to change things. Klopp just manages to keep them ticking over constantly, keep their feet on the ground, keep them working hard, and they'd won the league by February. Like it was won here. Obviously, there was a bit of a shock loss to Watford. They lost to City badly after the restart. They'd won the league by that point, so you can forgive them. And then they lost to Arsenal as well. But otherwise, pretty much, barring 3 games, a flawless performance in the Premier League. 99 points. I'm sure they would love to have got that triple figure, but who cares? They've won their first league in 20 years. They've been the best team in the world this year, I think. I'm pretty confident in that. Because they're better than some of their parts. They have good players, but Wijnaldum, when he went to Liverpool, was anyone thinking he was going to be? He's a world-class player. Oxlade-Chamberlain, Jordan Henderson. They're not world-class players. They just play like they're world-class players. They've played Divock Origi 28 times this season. Divock Origi is not a world-class player. Salah is, Mane is, Firmino is. Shaqiri, I wouldn't mind snapping him up at Palace, that's for sure. They've got some good youngsters coming through as well. I think they're going to be a real good side. And when they have a player like Trent Alexander-Arnold come through, who, again, if I was going to say the best player in the team this year for them, I would say Trent. I think he's been incredible for them. How many assists has he got? It only says goals. Oh, here we go. Of the 26 in 93 games. Not bad. He got his stats for this season. He got 13 assists for a right back. Crazy. Robertson as well. Brilliant. Van Dijk is one of the best defenders in the world. I saw them comparing him to like Baresi and players like that, and he is just a Rolls Royce of a player. Phenomenal. I'd say maybe they need. If I was being super critical of Liverpool, I would say they need a little bit more up front. I don't think Origi is a good enough backup to be playing 28 games. I think their midfield's fine, especially with the youngsters they have coming through. I worry Milner's not going to be able to carry on playing 22 times. How old is he now? 34, yeah. And possibly, in defence, they need to maybe look at someone alongside Van Dijk. But otherwise, they're just a quality side, aren't they? We didn't. Okay, Man City, because of what they are, they're going to get a C-, because they shouldn't be that far behind Liverpool. Liverpool are going to get an A. I know that's a weird thing to say, why City finished second in the league, but from their standings, they should have been closer. They're 18 points off Liverpool by the end of the season. That's not good enough for them. They've been too inconsistent. go even further back for Man United. 33 points separate first and third is just phenomenal. That's more points. That's nearly as many points as Bournemouth and Watford got all season. That's way more points than Norwich have got. The gap between Liverpool and Man City is nearly as many points as Norwich got all season. So that shows how good Liverpool were, but they've obviously had a great season. So yeah, that's our rankings. So Liverpool A, Man City C minus, Man United C, Chelsea B, Leicester C plus, Tottenham C minus, Wolverhampton B plus, Arsenal D, Sheffield United A, Burnley B, Southampton C plus, Everton C minus, Newcastle B, Crystal Palace C, Brighton C, West Ham D, Villa C minus, Bournemouth D, Watford D, Norwich E. When you consider C probably being the level at which they would say is a minimum accepted for them. So Man City finishing third, I'd say, is their minimum expectation of the season to qualify for the Champions League. Everton, I would imagine, would probably minimum expectation would have been 8th or 9th. So finish 12th is a little bit below. Palace are probably exactly where they thought they would be at the beginning of the season, where I thought they would be. Same with Brighton. Aston Villa a little bit worse because, yes, they just about scraped relegation, which I think is where people thought they would be. But realistically, with the money they spent, I think they would have liked to have been a little bit more comfortable rather than going down to the last game of the season. And then, obviously, Bournemouth, Watford, Norwich all did badly, getting relegated. West Ham, for the team they have and the money they've spent, they should be way higher than 16th. Everton should have done better. Newcastle have had a great season, I think. They'll be very happy with that, just staying in the Premier League. Sheffield United, obviously, phenomenal. Liverpool, phenomenal. So, yeah, that's where we're at with our Premier League review. I hope you've enjoyed it. We're coming up to nearly an hour for this one, so it would have been pretty close to 2 hours if I hadn't split it. We've still got the European competitions to come in August. There's not going to be much of a break, is there? The transfer windows are going to be interesting. I will definitely do some transfer roundups. I'll definitely do my kit review and all that type of stuff. But till then, guys, thank you for watching. It's my pleasure, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.